All right, all of you freedom-loving boys and girls, welcome to CLS After Dark, where just like the drug, you don't know how long it's going to last, except tonight you do. It's only going to last an hour. Might even last a little bit less. So, so pour yourself an adult cocktail and, and ride it out for as long as you can get. Hey, we're here live from planet Earth, northern Minnesota for me, and we've got our special guest. He's been on before, Clint. Clint, do you want to are you in an undisclosed location? Do you want to say where you're from?
Nope. I'm just down here in Georgia, down outside of Fort Benning here in Columbus.
God's country. We got a couple people here. I don't know how many folks we're going to have here tonight. I apologize. I keep saying this all the time, and Clint and I had a great conversation about it today, but look, it just is what it is. You're wearing 10 different hats and you can't always get out there and do the social media. And the truth is, if you're running a business in America today, you need to be doing social media. So, just,
that's right.
All it is. So we've got Clint, we've got Gene saying, woo. We've got Henner Ben from Minnesota, Gene from across the pond, and then Gene saying good evening. And, we'll see who else can join us here tonight. But excuse me. But for anyone watching live, or if you watch us on demand afterwards, this is kind of an announcement live stream. And it's a test run. So, the bottom line is, the economy's the economy. You're a small business owner. There's a million hats to wear, and there's only so much time in the day, right? And on top of it, I'm old, and, I can't do 3-hour live streams anymore. So, I've been thinking about how we're doing our social media going forward. And tonight is going to be one of those examples. So, it's not bad news. It's just the reality. So, the CLS After Dark, this is going to be our last episode for the season, hence the title, the Sabbatical edition. We're going to take a break from this until we get back into fall of this year, because the reality is, even if I just did this one day a month with summer here and all that, how many people really are going to be in attendance and watching, maybe on demand, but there's just other ways to better use to maximize my time on target. So this is going to be our last CLS After Dark until fall. Because again, let's just all be honest. You're a captive audience when it's 40 below, as opposed to, it's 80 above and you're living in fake time. And you think it's like, still daylight at 8 o'clock because of daylight. Don't even get me going on daylight savings here tonight. But, yeah, we'll see. But anyway, so tonight we're going to try a different format. And then this kind of came about. I was talking to Clint earlier, and we were just bullshitting, just like I'm sure everybody else does, about life and just, business and things of that nature. And I was already debating what I wanted to do for the CLS After Dark, and then the CLS gear on the gear side on the first Monday of the month. By the way, they're a little plug. The CLS, specific CLS live stream, first Monday of the month. That's what we're going to do going forward. And we'll have some more information about that. But what Clint and I are going to try to do tonight and just mess around with is probably what the format for the CLS gear, like whether it's a loadout or whatever, that's going to be the format that we're going to start doing over on the regular first Monday of the month live stream. That we're still going to do. I'm hoping you guys are like too tired, hungover, or exhausted from your kids running you around all weekend long, and we could have a good audience on that first Monday of the month. But this is the last of the CLS After Darks. Take your little blue pills. Maybe, hopefully they'll last you all the way until fall of this year, and then we'll bring this stuff back. But in the meantime, again, this is kind of the format. So without further ado, let me just introduce our guest. You've seen him here before, the man, the myth, the legend, Clint, Nemesis Camo. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, sir?
Yeah, I know there's some people here that's watched us before. I've been fortunate to have Mark have me on the show more than once, and definitely like to come on and talk about, a little bit of politics, a little bit of gear, partnerships in the industry, and really that's where Mark and my conversation went this afternoon while we was prepping for coming on live, as we were talking about, business and, maximizing, the reach that we really try to reach out to the people that know Centerline Systems or know Nemesis Camo, and really try to bring the content that that's interested in, and not, like Mark said, not only if you're watching it live, but if you watch it after it's uploaded and you can watch it later. Very important, because at the end of the day, you know, Mark's an industry partner of mine with Centerline Systems. I'm very fortunate to have some great partners in the industry, and Mark is one of them. And I love to support the people that support me. It is very, very important. And that was the conversation that Mark and I were having about the content that we talk about. And you know, of course, Mark and I, there's a lot of us that keep an eye on politics and what's going on, because that influences our business, you know, and our business at the end of the day, although I'd love to sit and bash Nancy Pelosi as much as possible. But really, at the end of the day, we keep an eye on what's going on in our governments, so we can figure out where the direction of our businesses are going and how that's going to work out. So, like I said, I've been on before. Most of you know, like Mark, I have a military background, mostly in the special operations area, U.S. Army Rangers, and then as a medic, and then spent a bunch of time in the Special Forces, in 3rd Special Forces Group, 20th Special Forces Group, and some other small units within special operations. And then after I retired, jumped out and worked. I like having lots of irons in the fire, so I do some contracting, do some firearms training, some instructional stuff. And so I love to bounce around, like to keep a lot of irons in the fire, because you just never know what's coming next. And so I like to have lots of variety. I like to diversify. But one of my big pushes right now is Nemesis camo, and something that I've always been interested in is camouflage, not only for the military application, but for some hunting, and in one of the things that Mark and I talked about, bushcraft. You know, and bushcraft really comes back to all the techniques and tactics that are used in the field, whether that's military, paramilitary, self-reliance, preparedness. All those things are stuff that we're interested in, and subjects that we can really dive into. So, you know, I'll pitch it back over to Mark, and that's a little some of our thoughts and what we talked about today, and what we're going to talk about on this live.
And then, you know, and let's bring camouflage up again. So we're going to kind of talk about a couple different subjects, but I think the goal here is, if you're kind of already picking up what I'm putting down, is like the goal going forward for the CLS gear side is to bring on a subject matter expert like Clint, whether it's like, you know, like we've had Kevin Estella on before. Maybe we can get Kevin Estella to come back on. We've had Evan Sambita from Sambita Custom Knives, you know, and he's got just such a diverse background in hunting. I mean, that guy's freezer is all full of wild game. So, you know, to like what Clint said, you know, Clint and I, you know, well, and actually I'll come back a quick second to it. Right before we went live, I was talking to Blackbeard, and he was asking me some questions of like, hey, did you start doing this in the military, the agency? And I'm like, no, actually, this actually really started when I was a kid. So, and I want to bring it back over to Clint when we get here, but, you know, like everybody thinks military and tactical and camouflage, and a lot of people put that off to, you know, one side of their thought process, or they don't like it because it's too military, you know. And I'm not picking on anybody in the bushcraft world, but like so much of that bushcraft and survival, you know, comes from pioneers, comes from, you know, scouts, and a lot of that is from the military. I mean, like, you know, 550 cord. That's a military item right there, right? That wasn't developed, you know, for the bushcraft community. That was something that was developed inside of the military for use for sling loads and rigging and all that kind of stuff. So I really hope, Clint, that we can talk a little bit about that as well, because, you know, it's a Venn diagram, if you want to use that way. And there's so much of that military, the stuff that you're taught in the military, or the skills or the tools that are created through military applications that are multifaceted. And that, you know, so from a business perspective, if I can, on my own live stream, on my own channel, talk about the application of my gear, you know who you are. You know, the person was giving me crap like, oh, you know, I'm like, yeah, it's my channel, dude. And you're like, what did you think I was going to do? You know?
Yeah.
But to that point, all I'm just trying to say is, you know, I try to take all that stuff I learned from the military and the agency and Clint's going to chime in on this, and I'm sure it's going to be a very similar story. And you're trying to use those concepts, those lessons learned, those applications, and you're bringing them into the gear that you're making. So, you know, I think for me going forward, and then just to get back to it, the question that Blackbeard was like, you know, hey, where did you learn all this stuff? And the truth is, I learned it as a kid. Like, I'm an old dinosaur, and you know, I didn't grow up with a PlayStation, or, you know, that stuff wasn't around. I mean, Nintendo came out, and there was like one or two of my friends had them, but hardly anybody had a Nintendo. I can't remember what they were even called back in the day. Like the little, you know, two-dimensional Defender. Yeah, Atari. That's what it was. Exactly. Thank you.
I'm old too.
Yeah, but and so in response to that, I was just like, no, like our idea was fun, was being outside, you know, playing army or exploring or making tents or out hunting. You know, at an early age, I was always walking around with a 22 or a 410, and I can't quite remember. And if Sheriff Eliason watches this, or any of the guys that I grew up with watches, I think I was like 14 or 15, and we all went winter camping for like 4 days. Like, and there was no adult involved. It was like, you know, somebody else's brother and somebody else's brother who could drive. And then all of the, you know, again, we were like 14, 15-year-old kids. We, you know, some of us were snowshoeing, some of us were skiing. We're pulling an Accio behind us. Well, it wasn't really an Accio, but we're pulling a sled with all of our gear. You know, we're making camp, clearing the area out, making a snow wall to reflect it, making a big fire pit, making snow. We made, actually, our shelters were snow shelters, you know, and that's what you did as a kid when I was growing up. So I guess that was kind of bushcraft, but it was just also like what you did, right? So Clint, bringing that over to you. So I'm just using my, you know, experience growing up from northern Minnesota, but that was actually only amplified. And the military, you know, especially, you know, light infantry, I was in an Arctic light infantry unit, was a reserve unit, but honestly, it was the best unit I ever served in, where all of those skill sets were trained. You were given more opportunities to learn it. I mean, we got Arctic light, Arctic warfare schools and things of this nature. So, you know, on the military application to the bushcraft side, I don't know why sometimes it seems like no one wants to, they want to keep those things separate. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So much stuff that you're taught in the military, maybe that's not the case anymore, but it was back when I was in the military. It has a direct application to bushcraft. Clint?
Yeah, well, that's going to help me segue right into our first conversation on this. And, you know, this, just what you were saying, you know, it almost didn't matter when it was, but mostly in the summertime, I got out of bed. My mom looked at me and said, "Get out of the house." Yep. She wanted me gone, you know. So, you know,
we'll see you at 8 o'clock at dinner time, you know, when it's dark.
Street lights, as long as the street lights are on, I better be able to yell your name and you can hear me. So that was pretty much the rules. Be gone, but be close enough that I can yell for you for dinner when the street lights come on. And that's an interesting subject, because a lot of kids don't have that these days. And this is where it's going to segue into our discussion, you know, and you just said it, you know, as a kid, I was pretty much, my mom knew I was probably pretty much within the county lines somewhere. You know, I was doing military orienteering. I was fording across creeks and ponds and catching fish and tadpoles and frogs and being outside, you know, and just like you just started talking about, I was either building a fort in the woods, I was building a tree house, riding a mini bike, riding my bicycle, jumping some kids over some milk crates. I was doing something outside.
Land navving from your backyard through the woods to someone else's house. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
You know, all that stuff. It was second nature to us, because we were literally told to go outside, because we weren't buried in a screen, you know, in a phone. So that, you know, I was able to, and as we started to talk about with our businesses, the thing that's really important is connecting with these people that have similar interests, that like our camo, like our gear. And these people attend, they literally go out and go attend things so they can capture that what we used to have. So this past weekend, I spent some time. I went up to the fall camp out, or spring camp out for the Georgia Bushcraft. And I really enjoyed it. I got to see a lot of stuff up there, ran into some vendors, and do what I do best, which is go out, meet some people, talk about gear and equipment and knives and sheaths and tents and food procurement and cooking and all kinds of stuff. So spent all day Saturday up at the Georgia Bushcraft location, which is east of Atlanta. So had a great time. You know, right off the bat, I got there. There was probably, and I'm guessing that there was probably 300, maybe 350 people there. You know, the field was filled with cars, lots of people out there camping, you know, and I actually walked by and I stopped to notice one thing. There was a guy that had a tent mounted Jeep, one of those pop-up tents that he got on top of the Jeep. And he was sitting there in some fold-up chairs with his daughter. And it was just him and his daughter.
Nice.
You know, and my daughter was with me when we went up there Saturday. So she went and she was doing my little admin thing for me. She was grabbing, I brought some presents for some people and some Nemesis camo stuff, and handed out a lot of watch bands and stickers and things like that while I was out there, while I was meeting some people. So ran right into the first thing. I ran into somebody that I had already, reached out with on social media, which was Wizard Forge Knives. So I got to meet them in person, him and his other half, his wife, and got there and stand there, and great people. I love meeting all my brand partners in person. So I have a personal connection when they reach out to me. It's not like some stranger. So it was great to be able to meet them. Went right from them over to, I met Kevin. What was Kevin's last name, Mark?
Estella.
You
met Kevin Estella? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I met Kevin up there, and he was in the Reef Knife booth, which I met Stu from Reef Knives. Another great conversation. Enjoyed talking to Kevin and Stu over there. Looks like we're going to be collaborating on some stuff, on some knife sheaths and possibly some micarta, stuff like that. Just building relationships up there in an environment where people are outdoors, learning skills, enjoying their gear and equipment, vetting their gear and equipment in the field. So they actually out learning classes. I sat there and watched, fire starting classes and food preparation classes. Got to see a lot of stuff. And so I actually got to, like I said, I got to see Wizard Forge, Reef Knives, another company, Wahala Hammocks and Outdoors. Great guy, Jason. I met him and all of these people, I walk away with people that there's a possible collaboration, like I have with Mark with Centerline Systems, and that for Nemesis camo is huge. Same thing with Mark. We're always trying to reach out to our customer base and the people that are frequenting our businesses. So
and that was just a great introduction to the conversation, and then selfishly kind of bringing it back to the center or the CLS After Dark. Hey, if you're watching it live, or if you watch it on demand, leave a comment in the on demand side and tell me what you're thinking about that. So again, I think the intention, just to kind of piggyback on what Clint just said, is, hey, on the no more than an hour. I think it's got to be much shorter live streams. But then take the loadout lives and either do it as a loadout live, bringing a guest on. I still really enjoy that, but we could also do those as standalone or on-demand videos. But then reaching out, so I've had, just to what you said. So Kevin Estella's been here before. Some of those other guys I don't know, but Kevin Kinney from Empire Canvas has been on here before. So I think, boys and girls, the intent here is to kind of, to echo what Clint just said, is, look, there's a lot of great companies out there, and there's a lot of great opportunities. And as business, I personally, and this is why I wanted to, and Clint can back me up, this was not the intent for tonight's show, but I called an audible. I'm like, hey, let's just do this instead. And because I think that's kind of the way forward that I would like to get into. And Clint and I have talked about this, offline for a while, is to find those other like-minded individuals. Yeah, we're not all in competition with each other. And even if you are, in, quote unquote competition, you don't have to be in competition. Now, it's obviously a little bit different for Clint. He's the manufacturer, the designer of a camouflage pattern. But, me as a guy who just makes gear, and and so here's where a little bit of politics will come in. Look, I think the tariffs, I'm not going to get into the economics of it, but what I, as a manufacturer, am tired of is like, oh, the gear's expensive. I'm like, compared to what? Compared to cheap ass gear made in China? I just was talking to a customer yesterday, and and sir, if you watch this, you know exactly who you are. The guy's purchased a bunch of stuff for his kids. Now he's upgrading his new kit for himself, and he and I were talking, and he knew exactly one of the companies that's ripped off my design and is selling it on Amazon for $35. Just think about that, boys and girls. You buy somebody's product, you go to China, work with a company there, reverse engineer it, and then you're selling it in America on Amazon for $35. Let me just ask you, this is the politics, but this goes into what I want to start doing going forward. I'm very lucky that Clint was able to come on here. Is that who you want to do business with? Somebody who does that? But more importantly, he's selling it for $35. How much profit do you think he's making? Probably $10 to $15. That means it costs $20 for that product to be manufactured in China from the manufacturing facility, loaded into a Connex, shipped to a port of entry, loaded onto a vessel, then shipped across the ocean, offloaded at a port of entry in America, then onto a transportation, vehicle or a train, moved to a distribution center, and then sold to you. And all, like, doesn't that just tell you how cheap that piece of gear is? So instead of that, and I hope people start waking up. So that where I hope the tariffs get people to realize these are the issues. Like, I can't speak for Clint if he wants to talk about stuff, but I know what Clint is going through, because I do business with a bunch of the, I should just shut up right there. That's not my place to say, but look, I buy all my stuff in America, right? So I'm dealing with other American companies, distributors, manufacturers. I would much rather bring on people and support them, even if we're in the same space, right? Like somebody might right now, like, look, I can't, I'm going to hesitate to say this because I don't have authorization from this guy. And he and I have talked on the phone a handful of times, but more often we're doing little, direct messages on social media. Hey, where did you get this? Or I've got some of this, are you interested? Or, hey, and we're just working with each other and we're kind of in the same space, but I don't dislike the guy. I'd love to have him on in a podcast. And then everybody could hear his story of his business and the trials and tribulations that he has. And you guys are already probably figuring out who it is. I don't have authorization to say it, so I don't want to say the guy's name, but he's an American-made company using American materials, making, why can't you? I hope that, so here's where I'm getting, I'll shut up and bring it to Clint. I hope if there's a positive thing from the tariffs, that it gets everybody to start realizing, what all that cheap ass gear means and why you should be supporting other small business or other American makers and manufacturers. Clint, and going back, but just also going back to the bushcraft thing. Did you see any of that, or was that a little bit of the field? Did you get any of that from while you were there?
Oh,
what was
absolutely. Talking to Walhalla Hammocks and Outdoors, immediately we spoke the same language because we've worked with the same fabric companies, made in the USA fabrics, and first thing he says, so-and-so at this company, or this person at this company? Absolutely. I've worked with both of them, trying to get some lightweight stuff for tents and hammocks and, stuff. So he's like, hey, let's work on it from both ends, so, and that's the kind of collaboration that, and I brought this up with Mark, when you start working with people in the industry, you start figuring out, you're a single twig, the twig theory, one little stick breaks really easy. But as you start to multiply those twigs, they become really hard to break. And once you find great allies out here in the industry, you stick close to them because they're looking out for you and vice versa. And that's the relationship I have with Mark. You know, with Centerline Systems, he makes great gear made in the USA. You know, he's well known throughout the bushcraft community. And when I go up there and I meet another company, I bring them in and say, hey, I want to work with you. Having a camouflage brand is what I've learned, and I've worked with 2 other camouflage brands. And as I develop my own camouflage brand, the one thing that you have to have inclusively is you have to have multiple things. There's soft goods sides, the soft goods side, which you have, you know, pants and shirts and hats and backpacks and, you know, bino harnesses and leg gaiters and all the things that you need that people want from their favorite manufacturer. So you have to be able to make those fabrics that everybody knows, the 500Ds, 1000Ds, laminates, things like that. You have to make that available. But on the switch side of soft goods, there's the hard goods side, and you have to cover down on that. And I'll show you a little example of something. So this is actually what is called infused plastic. So this is my Kydex company that does Kydex for me. So you can buy my desert pattern in a Kydex infused plastic. So the ink is actually infused into the plastic. This is another company that's the same pattern, a little bit different spot on the pattern, but this is a vinyl wrap. So it's really important. Some people want vinyl wraps to be able to wrap, you know, tripods for their rifle or, you know, a camera, a tumbler. So vinyl wraps work really good for different things. This is literally, you know, Coyote Brown on one side. This is Coyote Brown on the front side, but it's got a vinyl wrap on it. So, you know, you can support Nemesis camo in a desert wrap, or you can buy the infused plastic. So 2 different hard goods solutions that also you're looking at hydrographics. So water transfer. Those are the things that as a camouflage brand, you have to branch out. So in that of making sure that I have solutions for hard goods and for soft goods, that is supporting Mark's efforts. When he partners with Nemesis Camo, I'm out here doing my due diligence to make it to where if somebody wants to buy Mark's backpack or a saw pouch, something like that of Mark's, then somebody else can go out and buy something for their bow or their holster or knife sheath, because, you know, a lot of us like to do that. You know, it's the man's freaking coordinate stuff. So you got to make sure that you have all these things as a brand and develop the brand so you have multiple solutions. When I partner with a new company and say, I have that, and we can cover that solution that you need.
And I'm going to just get some comments here, but just on that point, and everything, and look, boys and girls, you don't know what you don't know. And maybe none of that, the infused versus, you know, hydro dip versus, you know, maybe some of that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, but it really does from the manufacturer's, you know, perspective and the end user perspective. Like, you know, on my side, I only use Kadura brand Kadura, right? So that's one thing right there. But when it comes to the webbing, you know, there's solution dyed, there's vat dyed, and they have different properties. How the pattern, you know, is infused into the webbing, into the material, it does make a difference. And, you know, and so we pride ourselves on doing it. So where each individual strand is coming through, it's more expensive, but it's going to increase the longevity of your product. And then, you know, Clint didn't really talk about Cerakoting, you know, but there's so many different things. So from Clint, you know, from your perspective, and, you know, I'm going to bring this back to you, and I hope the boys and girls realize this. It ain't easy being green. That's a lot of work to try to find all these different companies. We're not talking about people making products in his camouflage. We're talking about trying to find companies that will make the material in Nemesis. Yep.
Yeah. The supplied substrates, and you know, making sure you're covering down on that. And just like when I started working with Centerline Systems, coming full circle back with Mark again with Nemesis Camo, is he speaks a language that I speak. So when we're talking about, you know, acid dyed, vat printing, the printing techniques, coming from being an end user as a 25-year, special operations veteran, man, I can walk on azimuth with a compass with a patrol in the middle of the night under night vision goggles and engage targets. That was something I was good at. But when I retired and I stepped out into the civilian sector and started, I felt like I had two hands full of thumbs because I didn't know what vat dyeing was or infused Kydex. I didn't know what any of that was, but I learned that, and you become kind of what is a triple threat. You're an end user, so you know what people want. You know what they want in a product. If you're going to spend money on a quality product, you got to know that the fabric that you're using is going to last. It's going to stay color fast. It's going to have tear, abrasion resistance. There are so many qualities to a backpack that you're putting into it. Then you become smart on the manufacturing side and the supply side of how to get the products that a manufacturer needs to make a quality product. So when somebody purchases their backpack, they're getting quality. It's going to last. It's not going to fade. It's not going to, you could drag it behind your truck for a mile and it's going to last. And when Mark says, do you have 1000D Cordura, vat dyed, I know what that is. And I can say, I have American-made Cordura brand Cordura for you to make your stuff. And that's how these things get started.
And I just and I just love always talking to you and boys and girls, again, whether you're watching live or on demand, and there's some good comments. I'll get to that in a second, but that really does matter. And just as we were talking and again, community building, bringing on other makers or people in these spaces, who have similar experiences, from the outdoor survival, shooting, hunting, whatever. That's going to be the goal going forward. And I like it for exactly this reason, because I just had a moment, just listening to Clint talk, and I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. And Clint, if you just give me just a second here, a moment of privilege on my channel, but boys and girls, for the longest time, and if you've been to my website, you'll notice I don't have a lot of specs. What I have are a lot of pictures showing different pieces of gear next to the gear I make, right? Different items. Because I've just been ripped off too many times. I had somebody call me up once, pretend to be a customer, ask me a whole bunch of questions about why I designed it the way I did. And then like 2 months later, somebody points out and shares something with me. And here's somebody making a product in a different material, like a rip-off version of one of my products. And all the questions that guy just asked me were there in that guy's product. And that's pretty low in my opinion, right? It's just, the worst though is the guy who bought my product and then went to China and is now selling it on Amazon. That's like, and I talked to that guy anyway, but and that actually left a really bad taste in my mouth, that's what she said kind of moment right there. But it really did. It really was like, man, it's already bad enough I'm competing with cheap ass gear from China. Now I got people ripping off my designs, right? But I think what I just took away from your comment right there, Clint, and I've been meaning to do this and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do a spec page and I'm just going to be like, yeah, no, because I do say, hey, all of my shit is mil spec. I do it in my videos. That's 55301. That's 17337. That's VAT dyed. That's solution dyed. That's this, 500575. I can say all that stuff. Right? I know exactly what that means. I think I'm going to do a spec sheet and I'm just going to put that stuff out there. I ain't telling everybody where I got it or, who's my distributor, but I'm going to do that right there. And if you want to you say it's Cordura, because, way back in the day, I had somebody say, oh, you just bought some shit from a surplus store. I'm like, really? Yeah, that's what you're going to say? Go ahead and say that publicly again, so I can sue you. Bullshit, dude. So, but I think I'm just going to put that up because I think another part of going forward, Clint, is to find a way where we're all working together and you're educating people because you don't know what you don't know. But then as a more informed consumer, you're like, hang on a second. Why isn't this guy saying what type of webbing he's using for his belt? Mark's got it all over the place saying what he's doing. He's telling you how he's even constructing it. So that kind of would cause me a little bit of pause. Like, hey, if you're not willing to say what type of material you're using or fabric, or like you said, if this is infused or hydro dip, why are you hiding that? I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's what I'm going to start doing, Clint. What are your thoughts on that not from me, but maybe
Well, I
the
agree.
larger community and educating people perspective?
Well, yeah, and that ends up really telling people when they maybe have, I don't want to say complain's not the right word, concerns
Yeah.
about the price of what they're buying, and how much effort you put into of, keeping business within the United States when you know where your fabrics are coming from. Man, I'll tell you what, I've got another guy that I work with that in the past, as a matter of fact, I'm not working with him right now, but my goodness, he's a former Marine, and he is unbending when it comes to 100% made in the USA. Don't even by accident trick him that something is made somewhere else, or you're gonna get a butt chewing, because that when he tells his customers we are 100% made in the United States, everything from the sewing to every component, and he, like you said, Mark, if you put those specs up and that's what you're doing, is exactly where our country's trying to go right now. Our industry has been decimated.
Yeah.
One thing that I learned, again, being an end user, somebody issues me a uniform, they issue me a backpack. I go out and do what I need to do with that thing, and it helps me complete my mission. I don't even put the thought into how that piece of gear and equipment is made. It's just issued to me to use. But once you get into acquisitions and you start learning manufacturing, where this stuff, how it's made, wow. I mean, I would have never thought I would have been this interested in quality of how these products are made. And people get really serious about where they're obtaining their substrates, whether it be fabric or fast X's or snaps. And it's very, very important. And yes, consumers want to know, am I buying a quality snap on this backpack or a quality fast X buckle? And yeah, they want to know. A lot of times there's people overseas in other countries that will only buy stuff from the United States, so they can say these things come from the US.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Again, I do really do. I would like to see more people become concerned about that, more knowledgeable about it. That's just me. And that's not just a selfish thing because I run a business. It's the consumer thing, and you always hear people use the buy once, cry once. I've never liked that saying. Before I read some of the comments, I want to come back to that. I've never liked that because, again, compared to what? Buy once, cry once. What? Be compared to cheap Chinese gear? Like, no, that's not even an issue. It's not a buy once, cry once. It's a buy once, period. Why are you crying about it? There's no crying. Like, yeah, it's quality gear, quality material, quality craftsmanship. It just is what it is. And I know we kind of started that with the bushcraft, and I want to come back to that, but let me just get your comments on the buy once, cry once, and then I'll read some comments, and then let's come back to that bushcraft meet, or that bushcraft event that you went. And Georgia Bushcraft, don't be mad at me. I'm pretty sure you guys reached out to me like 2 or 3 years ago. Look, I've been going through 2 or 3 years of surgeries and shit. And so I haven't done it, but like, that's the other takeaway from talking with Clint is like, yeah, that motivation to get back out there and start meeting, because there's a lot of great companies out there and a lot of great manufacturers. So, but you want to address the buy once, cry once, otherwise and then once you're done with that, I'm going to go to comments.
Yeah. And I mean, something may be, I do it all the time. As a matter of fact, I went out and bought something yesterday, and I didn't like how it performed. And I immediately was like, you know what? I cheaped out on this thing, and now I know better. I got to take it back, return it, and go buy the more expensive thing because, and it was literally a rifle tripod. And these things get ridiculously expensive.
That's not cheap.
Very expensive. I mean, if you're talking carbon fiber, you're talking aluminum, plastic, you buy too cheap, it ain't going to do what you want it to do. Yeah. So
when one of your bipod legs just won't hold position, and it constantly sinks, even just a little bit. Yeah, no, that's not bueno, man.
Literally, I went out and bought it because I just got a I'll show you a little nice little. So here's a really nice hydrographic chassis. And when we start talking about substrates, you're looking at an item that has vinyl wrap, hydrographic, Cerakote, 500D Cordura back here, another vinyl wrap, so you're looking at multiple substrates. And as a camouflage brand, what you're trying to do is make all of these colors stay on standard. So when you do go by,
and if you don't mind me just saying, I want you to point that out. That's very difficult to do. You're working across. Yeah, that's not easy to do for you on your side.
No, it's not. And I'll tell you, I kind of showed you a little bit just for sake of saying it again. Infused plastic vinyl. Now, although this is a different part of the pattern because the pattern's fairly big, this one, I'm looking at it backward. This has sage in it. This pattern also has sage, but it fell in a different part of the pattern. So that's the one thing about Nemesis is the pattern's big, and it's kind of like Forrest Gump said with the box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. So when you do something, so infused plastic, vinyl, but here's a different version. Here is, this one is vinyl, and this is hydrographic. So this hydrographic dip has to be able to closely match the vinyl, and doing color matching when it comes to a brand.
And if you don't mind, just because those were smaller products, it's hard to get all those islands to land on the product. Like, look, it's the same with me and boys and girls. I apologize to anyone out there, but it just is what it is. There's no folding saw pouch or mother canteen care or anything that is going to look the same. I'm cutting off of these larger patterns, and it just is where it falls in the pattern. I mean, it just is. But on the larger pattern items like your uniforms and stuff, now we're talking 100% sweetness because you can see a lot of it. Yeah.
As you can see back here on my mannequin, you're talking about a jacket, a chest rig, a hat. These are all different companies, that. And then when we talk about standards, like when Mark goes to purchase a new roll of fabric, if you're working with a quality company, you can run out of a roll, get a new roll, and now you're starting a new roll of fabric. And those two rolls, two different print numbers has to match, and like I said, unless you get into this business of manufacturing, you really don't look at it, but it turns into an eyesore if you got a garment or a piece of equipment that the fabric doesn't match, so you have to work with, this is the quality of the substrate producer, that you have to make sure you partner with the right companies, that they're going to stay on standard, color match everything. And then, like I said, as you have multiple brand partners that are making multiple things, Mark doesn't make uniforms, but I want Mark's backpacks to match my uniforms. So it is very important for me as a camo brand owner is to make sure I'm holding my printers, suppliers on standard, that it looks correct. And like I said, most people don't think of that. You just go out and buy a piece of equipment, and you're like, hey, that looks good, and then when you get it home and you match it up to something, you're like, boy, that doesn't quite look right, and that falls on us, as manufacturer and or brand owner, so interesting stuff. The further you get into it, the more you learn about it. And that's where cry once, you learn, I want to buy a quality piece of equipment from a quality company because they pay attention.
And I'll just throw this in there, a little plug for myself. And if Cindy ever watches this, my lead sewer, you look, it is Cordura, and but you get a roll, 100-yard roll, and then you buy another 100-yard, when you're almost, you're down to about 20 yards. But you have to, like what Clint just said, you have to pay attention, because my eyes can pick up just even a shade of a difference. It's still within the mil spec, the specifications, but it just is. I mean, there's a little bit more, a little bit less, or this batch is a little bit. Like, so it's, again, it's still mil spec. It meets the color, coordinate or the color requirement, but I can see it. And so this was like, it hasn't happened for about 2 years, 2 or 3 years ago. Hey, is that the last roll or is the new roll? Like, you like all of the last roll stuff had to be its own. Let's say I had a mother from the last roll and a folding style pouch from the new roll. I couldn't mix those together because I could just see just this slight thing. And like you said, you don't want a customer to have that same eye for detail and be like, hang on, these don't look the same. Well, they are, but it's just, so you like, nope, that roll material can only be used for those type of things. And then, the new roll. So, but okay, let me read some comments here. I don't know if we're getting a little bit far behind, and then we're actually at the Minnesota goodbye point. We're at 45 minutes. So we're going to start doing the Minnesota goodbye. That's a shout out to Questview, who is actually the first, actually Gene had a comment above him. Oh, actually, and Groundfog is here. So Groundfog, sorry, I didn't see your comment earlier. Groundfog's in the house. Nice to see you here, sir. Gene said, and this is when we were talking about this kind of grown up thing, joining the Boy Scouts and his uncles were all ex-military when he grew up, life lessons, having fun, hard work. We all try to be that action man, G.I. Joe figure we played with. Yep. Yeah. That's all about being out in the woods. Now, this is going to come to you, Clint, Questviews, AKA Blackbeard. Reefs look sweet. Oh, and then I guess he's talking about Kevin Estella too. Kevin, I guess, is going to be the host of a TV show in Iceland. Well, good for you, Kevin. Yeah. So he's talking about the reef, that knife manufacturer right there. Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, Stu was definitely a real nice guy. Where I'm actually kind of rejiggering around something right now with Kydexes. So I'm getting ready to reach out to him and hopefully, he's pretty much doing solid colors on his sheaths right now. And he didn't really have a particular camo company that he was connected to, the knife company. But looks like as soon as I get this thing figured out, which is simple, I'm like right in the middle, mid swing, then I'm going to start working with him with some infused plastics. But again, with my infused plastic supplier, they do a thing, strangely enough, I've got some right here, which is this stuff.
I don't think you have enough stuff around the camera, just judging by how many things fell over.
This stuff is really cool. This is 500 D Cordura. And on the back of it, it's got a 3M, I believe, adhesive. Peel this thing off. Man, you can stick this stuff to anything. It'll go right on your holsters. This with my infused plastics, guys, they sell this. The reason most guys like the wrap of a 500 D Cordura is it identically matches the gear, but it also has IR reflectant knockdown. This will reflect IR light. Yeah. This does not. So if you wrap your Kydex with it, this is my favorite personally, because I'm a military guy. I'm not just really for the aesthetics of the camo. I want it to be the extra function of IR knockdown, which is a little bit different. But
I'm gonna have to talk to you about that offline. I did not know they were making that. There's some pros and cons to that, but that's a really good idea right there. And then that just goes into boys and girls. This is why I think going forward, again, leave me in a comment on the on-demand side, and tell me if you like this kind of format and this, because this is what I think I want to do, because I get to learn things too. I mean, let's just be honest, I'm busy doing my shit. I'm heads down, trying to just keep throwing punches. And there's so many other gear things and gear, like I didn't know that Reef Knife Company. So we all get to share with each other and we all get to grow through that too. Like I like that as well. And I'm serious. I probably will talk to you and maybe try to figure out who's doing that. I don't have the application for my business, but I have the desire for me personally for some of that stuff. So because just like you, I'm like, no, I like that idea a lot. So
I think you may like this. Who was the gentleman that just made the comment about being in Boy Scouts and everything? And
that was Gene from across the pond.
Yep, Gene. So you may like this. I found this this to be kind of an interesting thought from that, exactly what you're saying. Sometimes as a kid, your heroes, you end up getting there.
Yep.
So this is what I used to look at as a kid and thought it was awesome. And then I ended up earning one of these.
And you earned it. Yep. That's badass right there. That's badass. Love it.
And that's
Well, then speaking of, go ahead.
Spending a lot of time in the woods, you know, carrying my hot dogs and my potato slices down into the woods to go make a lunch in the woods, and the Boy Scouts and military and all that background and knowledge and time in the military comes to where now when I look at stuff and somebody says, hey, I want to make your backpack, but I want this particular thing to make my backpacks, I've got to make that happen and make it right.
Well, and you know, and knock on wood and pray to God, but Nemesis is going to turn into be a legacy camo, right? Because, you know, because that's the other thing of what you just did with the lunchbox, you know, the legacy, you know, stuff, right? So, and then speaking of Gene, his comment was, and this must have been when I was bad mouthing that shitty ass person who stole, and he knows what he did. And he said he just looked it up on Amazon USA. Looks badly made, not the same quality, and not in Nemesis. That's right, Gene. That's right. I don't think Clint, you're not going to sell your stuff to China, are you?
Oh, no. They're going to have to get around that watermark in my fabric.
Good. All right, and then we've got somebody I haven't seen on the live before, Daniel. And this is where we're talking about American-made products. And again, but and I'm not picking on you, sir. It's only higher prices because of buying relative to buying cheap shit from China. I'm here to tell you, you go to my website right now, look at my prices. Yeah, I know. I'm talking about my gear on my YouTube channel. I'm not selling it anywhere near. Like, you know, if any of those guys from Shark Tank, if I open up the books, they'd be like, yeah, dude, you're doing this all wrong. They probably would have told me to outsource it to China because that's where your margins are. But like from an American-made company, like I'm not driving around in a Range Rover or any crazy ass things. I'm struggling just to make sure I've got milk and eggs in my refrigerator half the time. So, you know, but I get it. But thank you for that comment. But that's exactly it. And I hope that's where we turn the corner and we start realizing, you know, like, look here, I'll just say this. Cindy, my lead sewer, is just as, has just, even though she sews, the skill, it isn't just, oh, just sew it. You know, like I hear people say that all the time. I'm like, good luck. Go ahead and try to do that. Sewing is no different from being an electrician or a plumber.
Yeah.
Just as many, just so many facets and so many things that you have to learn over time. I'll just say tension. And people are like, I don't even know what that means. I'm like, yeah, that's because your gear, when your gear falls apart and the seams come apart, it's because they didn't sew it with the proper tension. You know, so there's so many things about sewing that come into play. And then Clint, I saw this one. So Daniel, I hope that answered that for you, sir. And again, not picking on you, but that was to the point we were making. So thank you. Gene wants to know, Clint, can you make webbing hardware in that printed plastic? A mother with clips and Nemesis would look awesome. I'm not 100% sure. Well, okay. How about the hardware? So if I understand this right, yeah, Gene, you could, and Clint, correct me if I'm wrong, I could take all those ITW Nexus plastics. I use best plastics out there. Speaking of, you know, the gear, right? But we could hydro dip that. I don't think you'd want to Cerakote that. I mean, you know, but you could do that with a wrap. So I guess what he's asking, is there anybody out there who's taking the accessories like the plastics and stuff and then making those in Nemesis?
Well,
and then don't forget, I guess to that, you know, there's also the webbing, you know, and
yeah,
not the 300.
As Nemesis camo has developed along, there are some things that are more important than others. And one thing that was right out of the gate that we really needed was printed Velcro. I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. I'll get sued. Loop. Okay. So, so printed loop. So when you have this and you've got to make it match exactly with the 500D Cordura and 1000D. This was my primary thing because people use bigger patches of this on stuff. So this was the first thing that I was concerned with. I've already reached out to webbing companies, and I've worked with a number of the webbing companies, companies like Texel, Murdoch, MMI. Some of those companies I've already reached out, already have somebody. I can do it right now, but it all comes down to dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So when, if I'm going to print the run myself, I've got to upfront the money to get that done, but I got to make sure there's enough buyers to buy that yardage up. So I haven't done
well, and if you don't mind, and it's not because not everybody's going to buy 4-inch, that from my conversation, right? So, 1 inch, inch and a half, 2-inch, it's a lot that goes into this whole thing. I mean, plain and simple. Sure. So unless Elon Musk, if you're watching this over on an X, hey, look, maybe, you could, get into business and help making this a reality, American made, brother.
But I will answer another little question that will caveat on that question about the trims. Within Nemesis, I designed one thing with Nemesis camo with the intent to fix that one problem. Within Nemesis camo, there is industry standard coyote brown and industry standard ranger green in the pattern. So if you buy fabric, you can actually use solid coyote brown standard webbing or standard ranger green webbing, and it will match a part of the camo. That was really important to me, and I designed that into the pattern for that specific reason.
And just a point of not privilege, but just there was another gentleman who's in this industry. I just don't want to say his name. I don't have his permission, but he had reached out to me and asked me what color I like better. And so to Clint's point, right? So when you're doing true Ranger green and 2 coyote brown, there's a designator for all that stuff. I'm using, it's still a 17337. I switched away from that industry standard Ranger green because I thought it had a little bit too much gray in it. And I've gone to a slightly darker shade of green. It's still a 17337. It's still mil spec. But to your point, Clint, we just did some stuff. Matter of fact, I think it was for Gene. Gene, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was for you. And we used for the first time that darker Ranger green. Again, I think it's darker, right? That's how my eyes see it. Again, still a mil spec 17337.
Yep.
With your Nemesis. Oh, man, I mean, that looked really sweet. And I think we've got something coming up this week or next week with that. And I'm going to have to take some pictures and I got to do way better pictures, not just phone pictures, but use the camera because I really think I loved it with the Coyote Brown, the 498, but like this other Ranger green, again, still a 17337, but it looks really good. Well, and that just goes into, you got the right colors and the right islands in your pattern, I think, and boys and girls, he didn't just pull that out of his 4th point of contact. That took time and development and thought, so.
Well, it's a lot of probably the people that have checked out the story of Nemesis camo, and it's on the Alpha Group Solution webpage, which is my base page. That's where the brand is parked under.
Right there on the very bottom of that, you'll see right there, Alpha Group Solution.
Yeah. So there's a story on there that tells about how I developed the pattern and why. And it really comes from, like this lunchbox, there's a history with these patterns. And if you look really close, this guy's wearing a pattern, and the history of frog skin and ERDL and tiger stripe and woodland, that is built into Nemesis camo. The attributes of those legacy patterns is where I wanted to go. I really passionately look at the Mac V SOG guys from Vietnam, and all they did was take some spray paint and spray it on their OG 107s, and it worked. It worked. It really, again, it kind of falls to, your passion. If you're a camo person and you like it, but you keep it simple, stupid, and that's really what Nemesis was. It kept that in mind. So I'll tell you, let me say one more thing, Mark, and I know we got to start getting ready to do our outro because we're at 1 hour right now.
Mark, 58 minutes and 45 seconds, 46, 47.
Yeah. So one thing, Nemesis, I did the Georgia Bushcraft, really enjoyed it. I will be participating in that in the fall. I would like to be a vendor. I'd like to actually set up, and I'm going to have products from Mark and some other companies that I work with that include fabrics and plastics and things, and stand there and talk about camo with people that like being outside. I will also be attending the NRA show up here in Atlanta, April 5th, I believe it is. I'll be up there seeing some friends that I've got there, and then Blade Show Atlanta. And I'm going to be trying to hit I pulled off SHOT Show this year. I just didn't want that consolidated shotgun blast, and I really don't want to like Las Vegas that much. That's just me. But, you know, so I'm trying to hit some smaller shows and make sure I get out there. And that's one thing that Mark and I talked about today about. We have to stay relevant. We have to stay out there. We have to talk about the things that you all are interested in.
Well, I hadn't forgotten about that. That's where I was going to end it with, because,
there you go.
You know, on that, but that was a good plug. And we'll probably just come back to that and have you repeat it one more time. But, you know, we were talking about the bushcraft show, and then we, just like any good conversation, you know, and again, so we're going to keep these to an hour going forward. And, you know, you can already see our brains, our little squirrel brains, you know, running around on the treadmill, went in a million different directions. Ooh, squirrel. So here we go. Last couple things. So I hope that answered Clint, Gene. I hope Clint was able to answer your question on that. There are some solutions and things that you could do. You know, so stay tuned. I mean, like, you know, again, like I've dabbled. So Blake, my friend from out at Fog Firearms, he can do hydro dipping and stuff as well. He really does Cerakote. I mean, that's something that you can look into. I've never gone down that road. So again, I do ITW Nexus Plastics. There, you know, I don't even know. Again, I can't speak for Clint, but that would be such a huge thing. But it's such a small piece. How are you going to make the pattern come out in X, Y, and Z? But you know,
let me jump in 1 second, Mark. I'm sorry. You've seen injection molding where they actually take plastic and they blow it in and make a Fastex buckle or you know, a malice clip. You can do that. Cost prohibitive.
That's what I was just going to say.
Let's just say that cost prohibitive.
Yeah. And that's with you on the injection side. I was even talking about, even from the hydro, it's going to cost so much. And if you do the hydro dipping as opposed to the injection, you're not going to get as many of the islands in the pad. It's just, you know, so yeah, Gene, but that's when you just have a good color, a good coyote brown or a good ranger green, because that on the plastics, because that's going to mix in with the camo really well. And then Gene was also saying, you know, buy once, use forever, and then pass it on. Damn right. You're damn right. That's, you know, and that goes into Paul's, you know, BCP. Good to see you here tonight, sir. Better call Paul. His thing is buy once, cry once. To me equals I bought cheap shit once, cried about how bad it was, and will never buy cheap shit again. Yeah. You're damn right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Thanks, BCP. That was a good comment right there. Man, I almost should just put that up there. I almost just like I might, Paul, if you don't mind, I'll talk to you. Hopefully we'll be able to talk again one day soon. I know you're busy, but like, I kind of want to put that in my hip pocket. I like that. You know what buy once, cry once means? I like that right there. And then we got a flurry of comments from Gene. That camo would look good on his simple slingshots. Gene's big into slingshots, and there's something to be said for that. So again, bushcraft, tactical. I mean, like, dude, there are corollaries. They all overlap, right? So it all kind of works out. Gene, he was talking about some of the stuff that you just did right there, Clint. He was saying that was awesome. And then Gene is plastic infused hardware. Yeah, well, like we just said, I mean, like, you know, but that's going to be pretty cost prohibitive. So if somebody wants to chime in with any other comments, you know, here in the live, always appreciate you guys in the live. Thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your day to be here. So the CLS After Dark, it's done for the season. Spring has sprung. You know, stay tuned. We'll go back into that in the winter months. I think that works. This works better. Tonight was different because this was a rehearsal for this format, what we just experienced here tonight. That's what I'm looking to do moving forward with our Monday lives, the first Monday of the month. You know, knock on wood, you know, I don't want to throw names out there, but, you know, we already kind of talked about, but that's a lot of the stuff, you know, and a lot of the type of people I want to bring over here. And let's have a good conversation about gear, the importance of gear. You know, again, you can just look around you. None of you are dumb. You can see where the world is and what's going on. And, you know, I mean, maybe you need to buy some gear and less, you know, booze, because you need to spend more time out this summer exercising and hiking and hunting and maybe the camo. Go back and actually see. I can't remember when the first one that we had Clint on, but, you know, Clint really did a great job of breaking down camo or actually just go to Alpha Group Solutions. I think you covered in that video too, talking about the distances and everything. Is that correct, Clint?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So on that note right there, and I'm just going to set Clint up one more time. So over on the Millstone Self-Reliance Group and Centerline Systems, It looks like, I think I got it written down here. It's not 100% set in stone, but it's pretty good. We're going to be having a booth at the Minnesota Prepper Expo on 20 through 22 June this year in Little Falls, Minnesota. We're going to be doing some presentations. We'll be, well, again, we've got to still work out some of the details with the guys running the show. Troy, met him last year, good guy. Just talked to his ops manager today, Josh. And so we're still working some of that stuff out. So look for me and Blake from Fog Firearms out there kind of representing, Centerline separately, Fog separately, but Millstone doing some stuff. Hopefully we'll be able to take some videos and share some content for those who don't want to travel to Little Falls, Minnesota. But look for more of that kind of content. Look for more of that stuff coming forward, going forward. Same on Millstone. We'll be trying to bring in other people to share their experiences and their knowledge with everybody. And then on that note, Clint, let's just bring it back over to you. Plug what you got going on one more time, and then give us a good outro to roll out on, sir.
Well, I guess, like I said, I'm going to be hitting Blade Show up here in Atlanta. Just guys chit-chatting with people up there, walk through, check out everything that's neat, everything everybody's got to offer, see if there's any brand partners in there for me. I love to work with great companies, mostly ones that are growing. I like those a lot, like myself. And I'll be hitting the Atlanta show. And then I was very generously offered to be able to come out with a lot of stuff with Recoil Magazine Off the Grid. There's Patrick over there and Matt and some of those guys. I hope none of these guys will get on me for mentioning their names. But, these are all friends of mine. So I'll probably just mostly get a butt chewing. But so I'll be hitting some of those things. I'll be hitting a lot of the smaller venues, just stopping by and seeing people, and like I said, after going up to Georgia Bushcraft, I was like, yep, solid. I got to be hitting these things and reaching out and meeting people. I've been doing SHOT Show 15 years, almost consecutively, up until we were doing face diapers, and I passed on that. And so this year I didn't go, but this year I want to be doing a lot more smaller venues. It gives me a lot more time to talk to people. So, and generate, take Nemesis camo, further than I'm right now. Mark said something about, making it successful. I've got a bunch of good brand partners right now, people making knife sheaths and holsters and, all kinds of stuff. It's a success already to me, because when I flip through social media and see people doing stuff with it, I'm super excited, just like working with Mark. And Mark has been given me a platform to come on here and talk about camo, talk about our partnership within the industry. And like I said, we've covered it. Buy quality gear, know what you're buying, and then it won't sting so much when you buy it, because you'll know you'll have it for as long as you need it.
Yep. Like BCP said, I bought cheap shit once, cried about how bad it was, and will never buy again. That's not what you want. Get good stuff and get good stuff that's going to work. Have it be multidimensional, multifaceted. I didn't even give Clint enough of a plug. I cut all the material by hand. And the nice thing about cutting Clint's material, right? So, I've got I think it's a 50-yard roll. It's about 62 inches left to right. The patterns always run left to right, but I don't have to worry about that. When I cut any other product, in camouflage, the pattern has to go left to right for the camo to work. Not with Clint stuff. I can here's a weird little scrap piece. Oh, I can just cut these other chunks out of that, so it's way less waste for me as a manufacturer. So, really like Clint's camo. Not going to lie. I just need to put my fat ass in a uniform for next fall. So, for bow hunting, and stay tuned, because, again, I don't make a lot of large products. We've got our little ruck, which isn't a very large ruck, but that's one of our largest products. Meat bag, you get to see the pattern more, but skeleton chassis, when that comes out, and you know what, at the end of the day, boys and girls, I'm just saying this, everyone else might hate it, but I'm going to have mine, because I already love it. And I know that's what I'm going to use for hunting. And a Nemesis, it's going to look badass. I just got to get myself a uniform, some Nemesis clothing for hunting as well.
Lots of stuff coming. Lots of stuff coming.
Gene just said, thanks to everybody. We'll wrap it up. And we're going to shoot for an hour, but if it goes just a tad long, I don't think it was a bad thing. So everybody, hats off to Clint for taking the time away from his family and his busy schedule to be here with us tonight. I personally, like he already knows this. I owe him a bunch of beers. He took time out of his day to sit and listen to me and help me think things through today as well. So, and that resulted in this podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, because this is probably test run for the format going forward. So no more live streams for this month. The next live stream will be the first Monday of the month. That's what we're going to do. First Monday of the month live streams. But I promise you, starting next week, and I've got to tweak my schedule a little bit, but a lot more content, 30-second videos, on ScrewTube. I know they like that. What are the shorts? 3 to 5 minute videos, 5 to 7 minute videos. Next week, I'm shooting a loadout with John, aka Gimli. That'll probably be a 20-minute video that we'll just do on demand. So a lot more of that content. And then if you've got people you'd like to see me try to get on for one of these type of Monday episodes on CLS, let me know. I'm already going to be working the phones. There's a lot of great guys out there. Clint is definitely one of them. It's been very helpful. Always willing to come on and talk. We'll work on some other people too. But at the end of the day, just like what Clint's talking about, finding those other great American companies, great Americans who believe in what they're doing, believe in that, and believe in the product, and believe with the end result, right? And trying to get those guys on and sharing that information with you. And if you guys got recommendations, don't be shy to reach out too. If I can pull it off, I'll pull it off. I'm going to get back into the bribing people with a can of bag of cheese to come on. Matter of fact, Clint, did I send you a can of cheese?
Not yet.
I'm going to send you a can of this. Have you heard of bag of cheese?
You sent me a nice backpack, though.
Well, I got some other things I'm going to send you. I'll throw a can of cheese in there as well. So,
okay.
All right. BCP said, thanks to you, Clint. Hats off. Thanks to all you boys and girls, you freedom loving mofos, all you apes out there. Really appreciate you being here. We'll see you live again the first Monday in May. Actually, I think that's Cinco de Mayo. I actually think it is Cinco de Mayo. So have yourself a beer and be prepared. Yeah. Until then, I'll have a whole bunch more content I'll start pumping out on a regular basis. Hey, Husky Bunch was here. Husky Bunch just said, good night, y'all. Thanks, Clint. Hey, Husky Bunch, nice to see you making it over here, sir. Or ma'am, not even really sure. But thanks, everybody. You know the deal. Reach out if you got questions. Clint's very open. You already saw his email, how to reach him, or his website. But if you got a question, you can go through me and I'll push it over to Clint. But if you got questions, reach out. I'll do the best I can to help you out. Until then, boys and girls, as always, keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. We'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Woo!